The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the fourth Labour government. A podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
There's a radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the fourth Labour government. Made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on The Spin-off or wherever you get your podcasts.
I literally have to go in 6 minutes.
All right, everybody, let's get on to it.
Fucking put it on. Ignore him.
No.
Tēnā koutou katoa. This has gone by lunchtime. We just had about a 15-minute story from Ben Thomas detailing how he lost a cardigan and he won't let us use it as a cold open. It was great content, though.
It was great.
If you join Spin-off
just like
members...
the police doing like their investigations into gangs and stuff, like my investigative techniques can't be made public because it would reduce their effectiveness.
Absolutely not. And you would be ruined. You would be cancelled. You would be finished. If you do want to hear the lengthy anecdote about Ben Thomas and the lost cardigan, join members and the premium club, and you'll get full access to the sealed section. But do join members. We don't have any sponsors or NZ On Air funding or anything, and we're just sort of clawing our way through to election year. So
why is that too controversial?
What? No, I don't. It's unfathomable.
Too maverick.
Yeah, that'll be.
Yeah,
Too
gangster.
The bad boys of New Zealand politics.
Just the can't handle the truth. Speaking the truth to the power. Hey, welcome to Samuel Robinson, who is in today for Te Ai here. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou.
Also, we have Ben Thomas on the podcast today, without a cardigan, and Annabelle Lee-Mather.
Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. What should we talk about? Let's talk about things like the Labour conference, fair pay agreements, tax, Hamilton West, maybe a bit of Iran. Well, kind of freewheel. It's November the 2nd, 2022. What did you do for Halloween, Ben? You've got a massive can of Mountain Dew in front of you. It's good to have that back. We haven't talked Mountain Dew for a long time. I remember in the deep dark days of lockdown, there was a lot of Mountain Dew chat.
I watched one of the Halloween movies.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
I watched the second movie from the latest reboot, which was called Halloween Kills. I didn't really remember the Halloween franchise particularly well, and Michael Myers, he's just like killing all these people really unnecessarily.
Is it comedy?
But like the house system.
Comedy horror?
No, it's not like a funny slasher. It's just kind of it's about the unrelenting, remorseless bleakness and tragedy of life. Just the way that challenges will keep coming at you with a knife and you will never overcome them.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a good recommendation. Annabelle.
So we don't do Halloween at our house, but we do Waitangi Day and Matariki vibes. In our neighbourhood, the tikanga is that if you put out decorations, you can trick or treat there, and if they don't, they don't come. But my kids, because we're up on the second level, they can see all of the kids in our neighbourhood trick or treating. So I just had like a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old whinging and crying for like 5 hours anyway.
Some lollies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been locked in their rooms.
Yeah, so I'm going to black out our windows next year. Is my little hot tip for new players.
This weekend, starting Friday, is the Labour Party conference. It's
spooky season.
The spooky season. I feel like we've been saying this for a while, but it's roughly a year away to the election. We have to work out what day it is soon. I think we'll be able to start crunching those numbers. They have a little sort of, they do a kind of mini abbreviated version, I think, in an election year called an AGM. Congress, they're called.
Yeah.
But
it's like a battle rally.
Yeah.
It's like massing all the forces outside the citadel before you charge at the enemy.
Sure.
Whereas this is a bit more dignified. It's more like remits and delegates skulking around, seeking support for things.
And going into that, Annabelle, they've just passed, Michael Wood has just got the Fair Pay Agreements legislation through, and I expect, whether or not that was deliberate, that will arrive to approbation from the floor. It's a very classic piece of Labour legislation. And then we had also, this morning, the CTU gave them a little pre-conference gift in doing some spreadsheets on National's tax cut plans, and that too is clearly going to be a key part of the Labour line. What do you think the mood will be in Labour conference this weekend?
I think they will put on a cheerful front, but I imagine that it'll be reasonably sombre within. It's been a really tough year for the government. I think it was important to get the FPA passed before the conference, and to have that symbol that they'll be able to talk about with their kind of key stakeholders, for want of a better word, the unions and so on. But I think the government knows that they've got a tough election campaign in front of them, and it'll be quite a serious one, I imagine.
But nervy. Think they'll be nervy? Maybe a big policy announcement, Ben. There'll be a policy announcement. I guess the question of whether they go bazooka or they go,
I don't know if they need any more policies right now.
It's another major legislative program.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's just the sort of timing. They do have a big slate of legislation that they want and probably politically need to either, as people said, drop or progress. If they're going to progress it, get it through, get it out. If they're not going to progress it, get rid of it roughly now or early next year. They don't really need sort of impressive new policy. I would say around budget time, that will be sort of where they really, put a stake in the ground in terms of what they'll be campaigning on and the promises they're taking to the election. They don't have time to get anything up before the election. In terms of the fair pay agreements, I mean, it's good timing for them. It's a classic Labour issue. It really is. You would say that in workplace relations, this is where they've really delivered for their supporters over the last couple of terms. Minimum wage, big increases there, which some people have said have contributed to inflationary pressure, but they've certainly delivered on that. A new public holiday. Public holidays are always good for workers. And the fair pay agreements, those are the sort of three big ones, and the challenge for them will be to get one of these things over the line and finished before the election campaign begins. That could be a little difficult. It
seems. I mean, the analysis that was done by MB, I think, was that it would be late 2024 before the first one.
Which is Michael Wood's made these sort of noises about this $31 million that the government is contributing to raise bus driver pay, and the sort of it seems like more an associative argument than a strictly logical kind of step by step one. But what the government seems to be sort of suggesting is that they can lock in these higher pay rates with this government sweetener to sort of kick it off for the first few years and sort of shepherd it in. If the parties all agree to a fair pay agreement, the bus drivers decide, the bus companies, sort of breathe a sigh of relief. They get this infusion of cash from the government, which they're looking forward to, and then they decide they want to take the handbrake off competing over prices, and they might be sort of shepherded in to an early fair pay agreement. Now, whether that will work or not, who knows?
Hope, do you reckon they're going to talk about Three Waters here? Do you think they'll dump Three Waters at the conference or after the conference? Because that seems to be like the major thorny thing for them at the moment, aside from cost of living and all of that stuff.
It was interesting, wasn't it, this in recent days when the mayors of Auckland and Christchurch, and supported by a few others, put in the alternative proposal. We've already had different alternative proposals, and this was kind of a version of the alternative proposals. And there were some things that Ardern and Nanaia Mahuta, the local government minister, said were bottom lines in terms of things like balance sheets. But there was also some language that was very, we absolutely welcome this positive, constructive, well-intentioned, good faith proposal. And it seemed like in some of the language as well, Ardern seems no longer to be able to talk about the Three Waters reform without talking about the cost of living, which is quite interesting. The fourth water is the cost of living almost. But I did sort of think in some of the rhetoric that there was a moving towards not jettisoning it, because I think they seem to be unwilling to jettison it, but looking towards a way of finding some kind of accommodation. I don't know how that works. It does seem like there are some intractable differences, but in terms of where the ownership lies. But I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out of Select Committee looking like a very different beast.
Yeah, I didn't take the Prime Minister's comments in the same way. Just a disclosure, I've done work in this area, continue to do work in this area, but...
And you used to work for Wayne Brown.
And I was Wayne Brown's media guy during his campaign.
/ BFF.
So, yeah, of course. Still / BFF. That's ongoing. What actually changed, the Auckland Mayor, Christchurch Mayor, Waimakariri Mayor came out against Three Waters. Well, as far as I know, their councils have always been against Three Waters. In its current form. So I don't think it doesn't change the landscape. I didn't think that the Prime Minister's comments were indicating that she was going to sort of adopt that
I think they were discernibly different from what they've been previously.
I think they were less combative.
Yeah.
Because, I think the government knows that the less time spent talking about Three Waters, the better for them. But I didn't sort of see them kind of raising the white flag. I would have thought that if you were going to ditch Three Waters, you would have done it by now. It would have seemed very strange if you were intending to do that, to kind of string it out over that terrible week of coverage during the local body elections, and onwards through now, only to then do it at your conference and sort of admit defeat on something. I mean, that seems strange.
Do it on Boxing Day.
So you're going to make it 5 waters, ramp it up on Boxing Day.
It is interesting. We've talked about it a bit in terms of the kind of the loaded mule of policy of legislation that the government has, but it also applies in a way to national in terms of its agenda for repealing everything. And Staff Glenn McConnell had a good sort of roundup of all the. I think he had a dozen different things, some of them much more intensive in terms of the work required than others. But, I mean, Annabelle, is it starting to look a bit like the national alternative so far? And they will come up with plenty more policy, I'm sure, in the months to come. But it is like we're going to undo everything.
Yeah. I think, you're right. That seems to have become their catch cry, is just that they're going to undo everything that's unpopular with the public. The issue with that in real terms, though, is that it means that you're not really able to advance your own policy agenda if you're spending all your time in the House unpicking the former government's legislation. So I think if they are to win the next election, that they'll probably go back and have a rethink about what genuinely is important and what isn't. And just in terms of, when they talk about co-governance and stuff, Marama Fox was on Party People last night, and she raised an interesting point, which is that once you actually get into government and you start getting all your briefings from your officials and they're talking to you about what's really going on, it probably starts to paint quite a different picture, and you realise that there's knock-on effects in terms of treaty settlements and unpicking those things as well. So I dare say that the kōrero that we're hearing from National now will be watered right down should they get into government.
Yeah, I mean, Shane Retty's left himself a bit of wriggle room on the Māori Health Authority, but some of the other ones are repeal, and there seems like there could be. It would make sense to leave a little bit of wriggle room. Ben, on the tax point, and we touched on the CTU numbers that Craig Rennie, who previously worked for Labour, has put out this morning. Is there a point at which National will decide the bracket stuff is a pretty strong argument? Indeed, it wouldn't be entirely surprising if Labour didn't pick it up and introduce it as part of the budget next year, especially in a time of inflation where everything is costing us 7 or 8% more than it did last year, when people are arguing for their wages to go up by the same amount. So they're no richer, and yet the tax take is noticeably higher. You know, that's a pretty. I feel like that the case for that. Doing something to address bracket creep is pretty powerful. But that top tax rate and undoing Labour's top tax rate, Grant Robertson has said Liz Truss about 1,000 times in the last week. He said it in Parliament about 1,000 times. He said it in every interview. And there are clear differences in the UK example, but it wasn't just the the bond markets and everything, which was obviously what really did it for her there. But it was also, at a time like this, cutting the tax rate for the wealthiest people in the country just seems like a dick move.
Yeah, with the brackets, you can really argue fairness. You say, we've all been accustomed to paying our taxes at this rate. If we're in real terms earning the same amount of money, because everything costs more, we're being paid more, we've got a pay rise, but everything is costing us the same amount extra, then you're paying more tax, as a proportion of your income, because you've moved into higher brackets. You only pay that on the extra money that you're earning, but that's still a real increase in the total tax burden that you have. So they can argue fairness on that, and I think they can win pretty easily. And I would be, I think we were talking about this before the pod. It'd be pretty surprising if Robertson himself didn't take some sort of step to recognise that in the next budget. With that top tax rate, it's very different from the Liz Truss situation. I mean, you're talking about between $500 million and $1 billion a year. So it's not nothing, but it's not going to sort of plunge the government books into chaos, sort of sink the government. But I think you've seen them already take a step back and say, look, we're not confirmed on the timing for this. It would have to be when it was appropriate. It wouldn't necessarily be the first year. It might be the third year. And I think as they head further and closer to the election, they might even push it out to the fourth year as sort of a second-term goal, depending on the state of the economy and the government books next year. But I don't think that this is something they'll die in a ditch over, particularly as...
Nicola Willis has already said, it's not something that we would necessarily do in the first year. I'm not saying we wouldn't, but, we'll have to look at the circumstances. It wouldn't take much for that to evolve into it's something we want to do in our second term in government. Second term as a national government, this is something we'll do. I guess the other thing, though, of course, Annabelle, increasingly this will be part of the conversation, is whether or not how important that is to ACT, who would be the coalition partner, just as we will start looking at everything in terms of the alternative, with that Labour Greens, and those are the combos that we're looking at, right?
It's an interesting one, because just like the FPA is for Labour, tax cuts are for National, and it really delivers to their key supporters. But it just couldn't come. It's a promise at a really, really bad time, where even the people who would probably benefit from it would see that it's not going to have a positive effect for the economy. So, I think that they will probably start to walk it back a little bit as we get closer to there. It's just a big bleeding wound that the government can keep smashing them in. It just makes no economic sense to be doing that right now. So I think they're probably going to have to shift away from it as we head into the campaign and come up with some different policies that won't be so polarising.
Now, you said that tax cuts are to National as the FPA is to Labour. And one thing that I've noticed is that FPAs are to National as FPAs are to Labour, in the sense that they give them an opportunity to sort of talk about, talk in a way that kind of recalls the things that MPs like Paul Goldsmith would have seen on TV growing up when they first got interested in politics, which is all of this thunderous rhetoric about unions holding the country to ransom, and ferry strikes before school holidays, and empowering and emboldening the unions. And it's been quite delightful seeing them.
It's definitely a generational lick to it, isn't there? And you remember, when was the last budget where Grant Robertson talked about undoing a wrong from those decades
right,
back?
yeah.
And in a way, the FPAs are very much in Rebecca McPhee has written interestingly about this, having written the biography of Helen Kelly. But the Employment Contracts Act and the changes made by consecutive governments, by the fourth Labour government and the national government, and with Ruth Richardson, this is about that. And I think just as it animates Paul Goldsmith, it also animates Michael Wood and lots of other people in terms of their kind of the as you say, the politics that they grew up on.
Yeah, even though the actual impacts, you can't strike under a fair pay agreement. So the impacts on the public may be pretty minor from these things, but they really allow the politicians to go sort of into full flight. Yeah. The other thing is something I was thinking about earlier today is there is likely to be more strike action next year. There's been
a good strike.
There's been basically no strike action in the previous 2 years because of lockdowns, essentially.
Nurses.
Nurses last year, but before, I think the year before there was basically nothing. So
I'm going to try and organise one for journalists.
Podcasters?
And this is the thing, right? Because
mums. Love that.
People, journalists at Stuff might be striking to get the 30% pay rise they could get on TVNZ, RNZ or whatever, the alleged premium. There will be, because the demands are going to be big, because the cost of living is big. Even if you just want to keep up with inflation, you need over the last 2 years, you need north of a 10% pay increase, and most employers will not be rushing to give those. So, you can look forward to a little bit more unrest next year, which I think the National will be delighted by, and whether you'd expect that they would try and draw in things like FPAs, things like the minimum wage increases. Whether they can draw its direct line or not. They'll bring them in as sort of associative and rhetorical kind of points.
But the interesting thing, just as a sort of footnote on the FPAs, is that there was some resistance when they were originally proposed. And I think Helen Kelly was one of those people that advanced the idea some time ago, insofar as they don't have any relationship with union membership directly.
The free rider problem.
Yeah, and so there are some people, I think probably many fewer now, given that it's become a kind of consensus cause. But a lot of people in the union movement were opposed to these things because, as you say, there's no requirement for you get the benefit whether or not you're a union member.
Talofa lava. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spin-Off. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spin-Off member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, senior writer at The Spin-Off. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Kia ora, I'm Duncan Grieve, founder of The Spin-Off. You can help us keep all of The Spin-Off's award-winning journalism free for everybody by becoming a member today at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Hey, let's talk about Hamilton West. I know you're excited to talk about Hamilton West, Annabelle.
Ben, I'm really sorry to hear you missed out on your nomination. I understand your people have been banned from applying.
We have. You're talking about the 3-person shortlist for the National Party candidacy for the Hamilton West by-election, which is being held on Check's Notes December 10. Because the Tauranga by-election, we were in Tauranga for our last podcast, weren't we? I mean, it's hard to remember when we were on the road. Wearing
our red bands, meeting the real New Zealand.
Can I just say we are adored in Tauranga? Adored. We are the darlings of Tauranga.
Apart from one guy who Te said was sitting in front of him who just muttered and growled through the entirety of that live record. It was fun though. Thanks for having us, Tauranga Escape Festival. But the Tauranga by-election, which was, whenever it was, which was when Sam Uffindell ultimately is elected as the MP for Tauranga, which he remains. The shortlist on that was like the world's hardest game of Guess Who.
Oh my God, that's classic. Yeah.
Down to the buttons on their shirts, right? And so clearly that was an issue, and they have addressed that, Annabelle, in selecting 0 white men. Tangata white men.
Yeah.
Once again,
white people
crushed into the soils. Not fair, right?
So incredibly unfair. What happened to running a meritocracy? That's what I want to know.
But the system is it been because every national electorate membership is going to choose the white guy if you let them.
Isn't that what happened? I was reading last night that there was some candidate selection process and there was 500 brown people and one white guy, and the white guy got it.
Claire Trevette talked about, I think Ireland, where there were, I think 2 women, 1 Māori, 1 gay candidate, and 1 straight white man. And he was
Guess what? Guess what?
Well, and in Hamilton West, Tim McIndoe, who lost to Gurav Sharma, whose resignation has triggered this by-election.
Who was good MP.
Lovely man, good MP, good whip. He decided mysteriously that actually he would rather spend more time doing the other work that he'd been working on, despite the year previously saying he had his heart set on a return to Parliament. And you just wonder whether someone gave him a call and explained to him what he'd rather be doing.
Well, if they did, it just shows that Tim remains a better team player than most of the people in national electorates. Because Luxon has been, Claire Trevette wrote an excellent article about this. Luxon has really been been pushing for diversity, but there is a blockage at that electorate level in a lot of cases. I think it's, if McIndoe took one for the team, then I think that speaks to his character.
Yeah, I agree.
And either caps off or provides a continuation of, a pretty admirable contribution to the party.
Meanwhile, Labour has appointed Georgie Dancy. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. She was the last on their list, 84th on the Labour list, and wrote a piece.
She's probably still pretty close.
Wrote a piece. That's right.
She only just missed out.
150 of the 120 seats have been filled by Labour in the COVID election. She was last on the list and wrote a piece about that in the spin-off, which you can read.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a good read. But she's up against it. I mean, in a way, it's sort of weird that we're starting to talk about the pressure on national and actually, this is a very unwelcome by-election for Labour.
Yeah.
Whether or not you think there is substance to the Gurav Sharma complaints, he is a thorn in the side of the governing party. They won the seat, admittedly, in the COVID red tide, yada, yada, yada. But it is to use the cliche, it's a chance to give Labour a bloody nose. National should win it. Sharma is going to unleash 10,000-word Facebook posts, breakfast, lunch and dinner through the course of the campaign. I mean, I don't know. Maybe people won't pay attention to it very much, but it's certainly not something that is going to be welcomed by Labour as a Christmas Eve gift.
No, and the thing is that governments rarely win by-elections anyway, unless it's in like a tūturu seat that's there, been held by them for a long time. So, I mean, even if the government wasn't in as much trouble as it's in now, it's probably unlikely that it would have won. It was a swing seat anyway that had only been won by National twice, I think.
Yeah, but it was a bellwether seat in some ways.
Yeah.
Like it does
but what it does...
That won the most votes since about 1990. So,
but what it does is just enhances... It just, the narrative that the government is on the slip, and even though it's highly likely it would have lost it anyway, it just comes at a really bad time this close to an election heading. It's just like the full stop on a crappy year.
I wonder if New Zealand First, they haven't announced yet whether they're standing, I don't think, but I was just thinking when you were talking about that bells of that Northland by-election, which was an absolute ride, and I don't expect that anything like that will play out, but it's a chance for New Zealand First to make some noise.
That's right. Winston Peters can go around inspecting the flags in the town square.
What was that story? The flag on the top of the beehive was looking a bit tatty.
The flag was being changed that day.
Did he know that it was being changed?
I assume he knew it was being changed. And then he got a tip off that it was looking tatty.
Right.
And this was disrespecting the people who died in the war for New Zealand.
Yeah.
And then he trumpeted his success at having the flag replaced later in the day. It's just shameless.
How long does the flag on top of the beehive get replaced, I wonder?
I don't know. This was actually within the Ministry of Culture and Heritage portfolio, which Chris Finlayson had. Okay. And one of the roles that I had was on...
To lower it? Did you have to go and lower it when a monarch died? Or?
No, I would call the Ministry for
when
Culture
the All Blacks lost the World Cup?
And I would tell them what they needed to do
with the flag,
with the flags on all public buildings, because they would send. They're the flag department.
Okay,
flags and ensigns and emblems and coats of arms and things.
Okay,
they're in charge. They're in charge of the Grace Kelly coat of arms.
Okay. Let's just touch quickly before we go and make up some rumours about Ardern's future career on Iran. The influencers, Topher What's-A-Doodle and Bridget
Topher Richwhite,
Thackeray, they were on, what was it called? Expedition something or other. You're a big fan of theirs, I know.
I am. Hey, listen, everyone, I don't know about this. So, when this podcast goes to air and you hear me saying hardly anything about these influencers, don't at Toby and Ben. It's not their fault.
Right.
It's because I literally have no idea who these people are and I haven't read about it.
Ben, what is your opinion on the influencers? One of the things that was interesting about it was that, of course, Ardern's was a bit muted in her criticisms of the Iranian regime as it was cracking down horribly and violently on the protests in Iran, and that it transpired that was in part because MFAT was urgently trying to find a way to get out these important New Zealanders from the country.
Yes, that's right. Causing
and the media, various members of the media who made inquiries got a phone call, and it was suggested to them that it would be very helpful if they didn't
report on it.
Yeah, and that seems fair enough because we're criticising Iraq for its monstrous authoritarian regime. What did I say?
Apparently, there was a story you said Iraq. There was a story. There's a story that used to go around it, in Fleet Street back in the day, that there was a sub-editor at the Independent. I don't know if it was apocryphal or not, who piped up one day on the news desk, "What's our style, Iraq or Iran?"
In any case,
go on. Have you got anything? You know,
yes, yeah. Look, It doesn't matter that, like, you know, there are all these people going, oh, they deserve what they get and stuff. Like, people on, like, national radio and stuff were saying that. I couldn't believe it.
What was that? Was that
it was panel? Like a panel, obviously.
Okay,
but, you know. Of course. But it's like, you know, I mean, handing over the firstborn of, you know, enemy of New Zealand, David Richwhite, is quite an Abrahamic punishment in itself, right? Like, I would think that, you know, we could probably help, you know, extract the fucking oblivious idiot influences. You know, that's sort of within the wheelhouse of a sovereign state. And it's written on your passport, you know. Yeah, and you know, you gotta, when they've got hostages, you have to mute the criticism sometimes. That's fine. Now we've got the hostages back. Now I can be a bit more critical, and until, I don't know, CB Woodhouse takes a wrong turn in his Aston Martin tour of the Middle East or whatever.
There is no evidence to suggest that CB Woodhouse is travelling to Iran.
I don't know any of the current influences.
It's like Gareth Morgan used to do it.
Fix this in post, put in a TikToker's name.
I need to drive
Whānau Kai is very
quad
good.
bike through North Korea and...
Actually, has anyone heard from Gareth Morgan recently?
No, not lately.
He might have been there for years. He's probably living in downtown Moscow.
Travelling around.
Written 4 books about how to win the war in Ukraine.
And actually,
he keeps ignoring.
I saw a shot of him on Instagram. He was wearing a cropped cardigan then. It all comes together. That's good. All right, let's finish up. We're going to, again, if you would join Members Premium, you can hear all our true rumours about Jacinda Ardern resigning, the exact time and date. We will return soon. Thank you, everybody. Kia ora.
This is Climate Adaptation.
We are the Pōtiki of the Taiao.
And the words of those keeping the home fires burning.
It's more than just going along and planting some trees. You got to be able to defend that place to the end of your life.
We have the solutions. We just need to come back to the belief in ourselves as rangatira.
Join me, Nadine Hura, and Ruia Āpirahama, the Kōpapa Korangi Series 2, Ahi Ka. Brought to you by Te Komato o Te Tonga, the Deep South Challenge, out now on the Spin-Off Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spin-Off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-Off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.